It is finals day live here at QuakeCon 2023 for the Quake World Championships. I'm DJ. We joined now by Ketchup and 40 Lions, and we've already seen one semifinal. We're about ready to knock out the second one, and again, this could be a finals matchup. Two champions, one with 4 championships in Quake, one with 3, looking for that 4th, and this should be a battle for the ages.
It's really exactly as you put it. We have 2 of the absolute best out there about to clash, and the fact that only one of them's moving on now to face off against RAPHA, who, you know, for the record, we're kind of sitting in the back room watching it thinking we definitely expected this to be a closer matchup than it was.
Absolutely.
And bringing it on the day, I guess that matters a great deal. But with these 2, it's hard to call. I think it is a safe bet to say that we could go into a final map, but as our last series showed, that doesn't always happen. So, 40, what do we think?
Anything can happen. I think it's going to go all 5 personally between these 2. But yeah, we were talking a little bit before the stream about the longevity of both of these players, absolute legends. I think it was 13 years ago, almost to the day, IEM Cologne, Quake Live, a completely different game, grand finals. These is upper bracket. The fact that they're still in this kind of form is just absolutely nuts, and it's fantastic to see, and 2 legends going at it. I mean, what a better day for Quake. This is going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, RAPHA is a legendary Quake player in his own right. It's not just Quake Champions, it's Quake 3, it's Quake Live, it is Quake 4, right? Like, having played through all these different eras against some of the best in the world, and still here today going up against someone who shares something similar, right? K1LLSEN's had an incredible run, the reigning champion too, so, you know, whether that's pressure or maybe confidence, I don't know, but neither player has really shown that that's something that affects them anymore, right? They're used to this environment. They probably love to be up on stage with the crowd cheering them on as well. I think a lot will come down to the picks and bans and how that might play out, but in these best of 5 scenarios, got to be comfortable with all your champions, got to be comfortable with all the maps, and you know, that kind of changes things a bit. You
have to be the most prepared on a day like today. We've had best of 3s all the way through this weekend. Today that changes, where you just automatically have to play more. So your experience gets tested. This is where the absolute greatest get pushed and tested, because if there are champions that you're not so comfortable with, or you might not be very strong with, that's going to cause you problems later down the line when, look, you combine those picks and the bans. By the end of that pool, there's barely anything left, and they're not the maps that you want to lose, because that's frustrating.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, we sat down yesterday with the players that we're going to be playing today, and let's hear from RAPHA, see how he feels about the final day today.
I think the goal is always trying to achieve #1 and trying to win. I think the biggest hurdle in trying to get to top 6 in the final day is just the best of 3 format. I think is sometimes a little tougher, whereas the best of 5 format is a bit better for me in terms of being well-rounded with a lot of champs. I managed to make over that hurdle, and really looking forward to the final day and getting a chance to win the belt. I think both matchups between Dandaking and Nosfa were equally difficult, just different play styles. I was playing really, really well mentally today, and I'm glad that I was on top of my game. I think the final map against Nosfa was probably the one that I feel like I was playing at my best on Corrupted Keep. Just the way that I was thinking about the game and trying to control the tempo of what he was able to do and limit his options throughout. I really only made like 1 key mistake the whole game, and really feels good to like play at that kind of level going into tomorrow. I think you just have to take it 1 step at a time, so whoever I have to play, you know, I'll just be making sure I get a good night's rest and fully preparing to start off on a win tomorrow. Mindset going into the final day is just making sure that, you know, I'm eating right, I'm hydrating, and just constantly just staying focused on the game. Thinking about, you know, either ahead of my matchups, like what do I want, you know, against my opponents, and then just once I'm in the game, just solely focused on the game and just problem solving, you know, from one thing to the next. Yeah, that's the mindset I'll have. Everybody has tendencies leading up, let's say, to the LAN, but then, you know, it's good to see what people are doing when they're nervous, when they're under pressure, because they might change things up a little bit, or they might favor a certain position on a map, and so you think about like, okay, how do I break it if they're holding like good ground? And yeah, I'm not really looking at avoiding anybody or whatever. I think it's just, you have to be prepared to beat anybody to be the champion. And I think all of us realize that and understand that. So it's just, you just have to be ready for anything.
Some really fantastic insight there from RAPHA as he prepares for a semifinal matchup versus k1LLSEN. Not surprised to hear a lot of those answers, right? You got to play everyone. I'm just taking care of myself. But I like what he said about watching people under pressure, right? That their gameplay might change, that they might do things a little bit different. Some really interesting insight from him.
On the opposite end of that, though, k1LLSEN has been able to show us this weekend that while under pressure, is able to get the win regardless and stay composed. You know, we think about the Maxter series, for example.
For sure.
There are other instances where k1LLSEN has been sort of pushed against the wall and keeps cool enough to get the job done. Now, against someone like RAPHA, look, you're fighting a machine. Like RAPHA is, you program someone to play Quake mechanically some of the best you can possibly have, and that's basically what RAPHA has. It's very hard to bother him in the middle of a map. I think even if there are frustrating moments, can very quickly shake that off and start to just focus on the next play, the next moment.
Right.
And that is a level of efficiency that you expect at this level of play.
Absolutely. I mean, we see it in practice all the time where he gets frustrated at this and that, but he's still able to keep his head in the game and overcome those odds. And usually in practice games, 98% of the time, he's the winner still, even after, you know, something goes horribly wrong, weird rockets, weird LG, it doesn't even matter. He's able to overcome that, the king of adaptation here. But as you mentioned previously, deeper map pools, deeper champ pools. I mean, we've seen Maxter really be one of the only ones to use Keel, and I feel like that's, you know, kind of a surprise to a lot of people. If I'm not playing a certain champ and he's not picked, then nobody really knows how to approach that matchup. So I feel like pick bans are going to be huge for this one. We'll see exactly what comes out between these two. There could be surprise pick. Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know. But
why wait? Why wait, 40?
Hey, wait.
You're the
captain. You're the captain. Let's go to the pick bans.
There you go.
And see what we have in store. It looks like Awoken, Corrupted Keep, Blood Covenant, Deep Embrace, a little bit of Molten Falls, and I'm still furious. So catch up. You can run through the champs.
All right, so quite a lot to get through. Athena taken away. Let's go through the bans, right? So Athena was removed first, Clutch second, Slash third, Doomslayer fourth, and then Molten Falls, the BJ, is removed as that final one, which leaves an interesting mix. Awoken, a expected affair, k1LLSEN being able to use the Nyx. I know that k1LLSEN, that is his favorite champion, or it used to be. I know it has been for a hot minute. It does fit his style after all. And then you have Strog for RAPHA, just nice and efficient. Corrupted Keep, pure combat. You're going to have the squishy yet ability to sustain thanks to Anarchy. Ranger, have seen on that map a million times over, does wonderful things. Blood Covenant, a bit more of an interesting one here. No movement. It's going to be pure Visor versus Galena. Different levels of utility. Deep Embrace, the Ison, which you would normally expect. k1LLSEN picking the Death Knight on that one. And then the Battle of Heavies to finish the deal. A lot was available to pick, and Keel still did not make it through.
Absolutely.
40. Sorry, mate.
Furious. I'm interested in the Clutch ban. I haven't seen k1LLSEN play Clutch a lot.
I was also
RAPHA
wondering
like,
about that. Yeah. I'm not sure. There's probably a very specific reason that I think the one that I find really interesting is Corrupted Keep, right? And Ranger, sure, we see a lot of Corrupted Keep. Anarchy, do, but not necessarily these two against one another. So I'm curious how that one's going to play out. You know, we all thought that there was a potential to go all 5 games in our first semifinal with Razy and Wenger. I'm inclined to feel the same way about this one, right? That it's really hard to imagine that either of them would be able to 3-0 shut out the series. Based off of what you see here, any thoughts? Do you think we're going the distance here for a second semifinal?
I mean, if you look at this composition, there's just a little bit more durability from RAPHA. He's going to be going in with champions where there's not a single light in there. You've got mediums all the way and then a heavy right at the end. k1LLSEN starting this off with 2 lights. It just means that from a game plan perspective, k1LLSEN does like to play on information. You know, it's all about trying to control that main sector of the map and just listen, observe, and try and find the idea of controlling the entire map without having to really stray too far away from those key areas. Whereas RAPHA, it's all about adaptability. Like, he just plays that unbelievably, fundamentally perfect game of Quake, but then if someone introduces a new dynamic to the fray, he can adapt to it pretty much faster than anybody else. So look, they've played against each other loads in the past. They have a great respect for each other, and they know what to expect from each other. So from that get-go, I do wonder if someone's going to try and be maybe a little bit more unorthodox, a bit more unusual, and it's all about just hitting that next gear, right? I've hit one, now it's your turn to step up, and then we will just keep doing that until someone can step up no more, maybe even on the 5th map.
I want to say specifically the map 2 Corrupted Keep Ranger versus Anarchy matchup. I believe we saw that yesterday, RAPHA versus Nosfa, and RAPHA just had all the answers yesterday. Obviously, Kilsen's going to approach it a little bit differently using the Anarchy, but that's something to look out for in my mind, as RAPHA feels very comfortable. I feel that matchup is pretty in favor of Ranger, given the burst potential. We just saw a lot of Orb Shotgun combos because Anarchy is squishy. So he took away all the armor. He said, you take the health, that's fine. You're never going to have any armor. Kilsen obviously has something to say about that, but that is probably RAPHA's game plan again going into map 2.
Well, we are loading into game number 1, map number 1, and exciting times. Of course, the winner of this will go on to face Razy in the upper bracket. The lower drop down to face, I believe, Zanaku. So, gentlemen, enjoy yourselves. Have fun.
Look, we have to remember that we're live at QuakeCon and there is RAPHA playing on stage. It's fair to assume who the crowd favors, 40.
Maybe just a little bit, the hometown hero, and we are officially live on map number 1, RAPHA versus Kilsen underway. We are on RAPHA right now, has that strong, has that heavy. Making his way to the rocket launcher and straight to the T-Con for a little bit of positioning here to feel exactly where Kilsen is. There's a good rail, and the Peeker gets sent out. Just like that, Ghost Walk is popped.
I like that pathing, though, of the Peeker, assuming that maybe Kilsen's going to use that invincibility to try and take a free rail, so we're going to path the Peeker there just in case. And in terms of spawn, I think RAPHA definitely got the better end of the deal. RAPHA spawned near the armor, had the weapon that you can use to shut down a Mega, with the light champion not really being able to get much from a single piece of light armor, and was able to get some decent pressure, but it is Kilsen we're talking about, who, if he has to play defensive, if he has to slow things down, he's going to look for that rail, and he has one of the more efficient rails in the business. I can't remember the last time we saw Kilsen play a map where it wasn't on point, and that's kind of scary when you're looking at this slow game. I'm going to chip you away, look for that golden opportunity, and even if you catch me off guard, I've got a Ghost Walk anyway.
Absolutely, especially as a Strog, you want to slide in, get close, and then that rail stops your momentum, leaves you open for potentially a second. So we will see if RAPHA will emerge on at least map number 1, maybe heating up here. As RAPHA looks for an opening rail on that engagement, and he's going to miss it, but he is, again, going to control the T-Con. That's kind of the name of the game here. You could hear a lot of the map from there, a little bit of LG and the Ghost Walk coming out. Kilsen maybe getting a little aggressive with it here instead. Holds back, another great rail. Tri-bolt reply from RAPHA, just a little bit of damage.
It's very rare that a Nyx will use the Ghost Walk and essentially stay in the same place. I think that was a really cheeky little maneuver to set up a really good angle that RAPHA might not have been as prepared for. Kilsen is going to collect the health, but it's the Kamikaze. No! Right round the corner into the first frag of the series, and it's a retreating rocket. Now Kilsen's reward, not only the 1-0 advantage, but also the heavy. And from this point, we've got all the weapons, enough of the ammo, and now, more importantly, positioning, as we're going to try and set up for this health. However, Kilsen, there's a Ghost Walk going to be available right before, but if he pops it here, he's not going to be able to collect. That LG is just so unbelievably efficient there, 40, and now we are split right down the middle.
Yeah, that Peeker damage earlier was absolutely insane. Kilsen was just trying to get the rocket just past the wall where RAPHA was popping the Peeker in safe. And finally, Kilsen landing the rocket, but RAPHA did so much damage that Kilsen couldn't really take that control across the map. Now stacks about even as RAPHA making his way towards that lower armor. He wants to position on this Mega, but Kilsen already waiting on that T-Con. It's going to be a little dangerous here. The Peeker forces out the Ghost Walk, and now RAPHA's going to go through the telly, wants to create some space, doesn't want to get caught out.
By doing so, Kilsen was able to position himself on that Mega, so in this position now, not looking too shabby, and you would think in theory could establish himself towards the heavy, but I think we are going to see more of a trade-off there. Kilsen's been hitting some decent ranged rails as is, and I think there's going to be a layer of confidence to say, well, you can take this, but all it takes for me is a couple of shots to undo this hard work that you've built. Some decent rockets. Sadly, that final rail does not hit its mark. However, it is enough to force Kilsen away from this next major item, which he cannot challenge in any capacity. There's enough time here that RAPHA can now pick up this health and start to establish, and that Ghost Walk, that does mean that Kilsen's had to retreat. I mean, he's out. He's got away safely, but again, he's having to give up so much of the map just to stay alive.
Yeah, you could see right after he popped the Ghost Walk, he immediately just said, I need to get out and get the vials again because I can't really fight for this heavy. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be vulnerable, and that's exactly what he's doing, trying to gather up those vials. So again, he has Ghost Walk when he needs it. We are still tied at 1, approaching the 4-minute mark, and RAPHA has pretty good control over this map, but Kilsen's doing a good job of making sure it doesn't lead to any kind of deficit in frags.
I've been checking this whole map out from RAPHA's point of view for the most part, and you can just see that he's really having to be the proactive one. He's the one that's sort of patrolling the map, and that's just compliment to k1lsen's game plan here, which is exaggerated by the fact that he's playing Nyx. It's all about trying to play around what RAPHA is doing and look for those defensive angles. In this case, though, not able to survive for long enough because RAPHA's going to push forward there around that turn, take out another frag, and also get access to that rather large health. And actually k1lSEN fresh off spawn. That's not good because you've got no Ghost Walk. You're a light off spawn, you've got no armor, and you are not in a good position there.
And you saw that previous Ghost Walk. RAPHA decided to push knowing that he was vulnerable, caught him out on the banana, and now he can push again. k1lSEN just now getting Ghost Walk back because he was denied those vials, and just in the nick of time, barely surviving. I don't think he should be here for this Mega. The Peeker might take him out. Luckily, he deals with it, but in the end, he goes down again, and RAPHA is just exerting dominance over this map right now. He catches him outside the telly. Big buckshot to the cheeks. That's a 4-frag lead for RAPHA at the halfway point catch-up.
Even though RAPHA lost the Peeker near that fight towards Mega, it's the fact that, you know, your Peeker disappears, you got that slight little bit of scan afterwards. That's going to make the advance up the jump pad so much safer, being able to get damage as you reappear. And as you quite rightly said, you know, we've hit that halfway point. RAPHA's looking really good, to say the least, and should be able to frag k1lSEN before the Ghost Walk becomes available again. If k1lSEN gets caught off the spawn now, that Ghost Walk's going to be used just to survive, and that is not really the circumstance that you want to be using that ability. It's good for ambush, it's good to disrupt and throw off someone's flow, maybe. If you're using it every time just because you don't want to die yet, you're basically playing a abilityless champion with a wall jump.
RAPHA dodging that Ghost Walk, and yeah, once you pop the Ghost Walk, you know you kind of have free reign, and again, RAPHA doing a good job of kind of patrolling those time vials now and making sure that k1lSEN just doesn't have Ghost Walk when he needs it the most, and also the control that RAPHA has gotten off the back of the first 2 frags. It's 17 items to 6 right now, catch-up, and that is just brutal on a map like this, especially playing a light champion.
Oh, looking for a drop-down rail. It has consistently been a trouble, though, as we saw earlier on. RAPHA's been the one that's patrolling. Even when it was an even split, you know, before someone clearly took the lead, RAPHA was the one that's cycling around this map, on the hunt almost. k1lSEN going for a big payoff here, but it's going to be a safe advance. RAPHA isn't going to engage that. He heard the Mega be picked up. He's going to have perfect timing on that for the next rotation. And with you being 5 frags in the lead, there's no rush. You know, there's no need to push forward. You haven't got to constantly chase those frags at this point. Yeah, that one's certainly going to hurt a little bit there for RAPHA. k1lSEN now looking to secure a much needed second frag here, and time is not his friend.
Yeah, about 3 minutes remaining, but off the back of that Ghost Walk, he did steal the Mega, and now he's opening up the map a little bit as RAPHA's forced through the telly, 78 HP. He's going to play very defensive. Another Mega goes to k1lSEN. He does need to find some frags, but more importantly, he's getting a little bit more control, and that's what he needed early on, as RAPHA was so good at locking him out of the map. That's a fantastic rail. Here's the chase. This has to be a frag. RAPHA's going to slide around the corner, trying to escape through the banana and just eat up more time catch-up.
It's the speed of Strog. Yes, Nyx has the wall jump, which is going to help in some areas, but even there, you know, RAPHA, in many other instances, would have been stuck without an escape route, maybe even 20 seconds ago. If it takes any amount of extra time to secure even 1 frag, RAPHA is in a good situation because k1lSEN still has quite a lot of work to do if he's going to be able to pull off this comeback just to tie things up, you know, just to maybe bring us into sudden death.
It does have a lot of work, but he also has the heavy. RAPHA wants to show up and try and do some damage. The Peeker sent in, but dealt with nicely. k1lSEN does have Ghost Walk in case things go horribly wrong. A little bit of wall jump straight into LG.
There goes the heavy.
Oh no, and the rail though connects the Tri-Bolt, and now the Ghost Walk has to be aggressive. The Mega's up, he's gonna miss out on it. He needs to do some damage, but instead he eats so much damage off of that catch-up.
I love the confidence there from RAPHA, who's going to secure himself another frag here. Right off heavy, RAPHA knew that it would have been way too unsafe for him to push down and try and fight to take the heavy away from k1lSEN. Instead, backs off, allows k1lSEN to take it, and then puts himself in a position where he can just get such a huge string of damage that all of the effort the heavy built up is gone, you know, in the blink of an eye, and then automatically k1lSEN is down on stack again, using that Ghost Walk to not only survive, try and push on towards Mega. RAPHA in a better situation and can just deal with it without having to worry. And all of that has just built a larger buffer now. 1 minute 20 to go. RAPHA, by all means, should be winning this first map. You know, I like to believe that there's always a chance, but in these conditions, I just don't think it's mathematically possible, 40.
You're saying there is no time this time catch-up? Yeah, I think with a minute 5 left, 5 frags, absolute miracle. And I don't think, unfortunately for k1LLSEN, there is going to be a miracle. As RAPHA, a little bit of defensive rocket, you could just use that passive crouch slide ability for the Strog to stay away. And this is interesting. We did not expect this. k1LLSEN gets his favorite champion on a very strong map for him. It was his map pick, and RAPHA comes out and just kind of takes control of the map early on. And we see here, good defense again. It doesn't even seem like he might get this one. Okay, the disengage there. I thought k1LLSEN might hit that rail, but in the end, it's not going to be enough catch-up.
No.
RAPHA's done it.
Not at all, unless you can magically hit one rail every like 2 seconds and try and change
Force
the game.
Spawn,
Maybe they'll spawn a little bit faster than normal, but
reach
I mean,
over, click the mouse to make them spawn faster, yeah.
Make them leave the game. But ultimately, though, it's going to be a really, really strong first round for RAPHA. And efficiency, I would say, is the magic word here. The understanding of k1LLSEN and how k1LLSEN would like to play. RAPHA always on the hunt, so k1LLSEN was never fully comfortable on this map. You know, k1LLSEN would have these instances, especially near the beginning, where he could slow play it a little bit. I know that there was that even split really in the opening few minutes, but as RAPHA took control and RAPHA started to take a sizable lead, that is where he is often at his most dangerous. I know Flea and myself would often talk about RAPHA like this. Even Dahang almost shouts to Dahang, miss you, buddy. These players are just so well known for when they've locked in control of a map. Sometimes it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to break that cycle.
Absolutely agree. And we saw the rail percentages there. Not that great for either player. Again, RAPHA's so good at just controlling the map that he doesn't need to have the best aim necessarily or hit the greatest rails. He's just going to choke you out of the map. So we take a look at the highlights here from map number 1. Yeah, going into map number 2, we're loading up here shortly into Corrupted Keep. And that one's going to be the Ranger versus the Anarchy, and that's the map that I was talking about earlier, where I feel like this is at a disadvantage for Anarchy. I know k1LLSEN's great players got a lot up his sleeve, but we saw RAPHA be so clinical yesterday on this map with this exact matchup that, I don't know, I'm a little worried, Ketchup, a little worried.
k1LLSEN doesn't shy away from using light champions.
Not at all.
We have to remember that this level of play, when it comes to champion usage, I don't think it quite fairly represents champions that you would see in everyday matches. You know, if you jump into a deathmatch or a TDM, you would look at lights and maybe be annoyed by them. But in a duel, it's just you and your opponent. You're squishy, they're not. No. And that changes the dynamic because it is so risky, almost, to use champions like this. I mean, even Anarchy, technically the bulkiest, I suppose, of the lights, because at least he's got the inject. But if we're looking at Corrupted Keep, we're looking at a rocket-heavy map, a super shotgun-heavy map, we cannot forget about that, and a Ranger who has access to orb, rocket, shotgun, all at once. And that's just not a ratio of damage you want to deal with. So k1LLSEN, he's going to have to be careful here, especially now he's one map down.
Yeah, if he gets in a bad cycle, again, RAPHA was so good at taking away all the armors yesterday against Nosfa.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, yeah, sure, Anarchy, you have Inject, take the Mega too, but you're never going to have any armor, and that's what the downward spiral for Nosfa was. Obviously, k1LLSEN has to approach this differently and make sure that he gets in on his armors, and we'll see how it happens, but we saw a lot of orb to shotgun combos, and I feel like we might see some of the same, so it could be very, very dangerous right now. Imagine being 0-2 down this early in a best of 5. You don't want that, so k1LLSEN has to clap back here. There's no choice, Ketchup.
But something that I think can definitely happen. You know, we have to put some respect on k1LLSEN here. He is a champion in his own right, and that's for good reason. Yeah. He's been able to take a bracket full of these players and become #1 in the past. And to be honest, with how he's been looking this weekend, and I must remind everyone, the clutch he's been able to display, it's something that we have to remember. You're going up against RAPHA. Yes, you know it's going to be a hard opponent, but you also know you have it in you to win this next map. You know what you've got to do. In this case, I would say you just got to be bloody careful, Flea, because that orb and shotgun lies in wait, and RAPHA with that clinical timing, if he gets a frag at a really good time, especially when those 2 major items are like split up, that's like worst case scenario. And I'm going to be honest, I think RAPHA got the better spawn.
Yeah, they got the armor, and there's a shotgun orb combo already, taking the heavy away. As k1LLSEN has to live on the lights, at least at the start. A little bit of LG to make sure that RAPHA doesn't push too far in. Nice little rocket here. At the very least, information early. Why not? But he has to be careful. The machine gun might tear through that anarchy here. k1LLSEN in a bad way. He's backed up. Doesn't have a lot of options in terms of escaping. He wants to try and stay for this heavy. It's going to be a fight to the death, potentially. He's 85 HP, and RAPHA can just push him away. This is so bad for k1LLSEN. He has to make a quick rotation, get out of here, but RAPHA's so good at reading his opponent, not playing around the items. Fantastic rocket damage from k1LLSEN to even it out, and the Dire Orb is popped, but at the end, RAPHA will still get both majors catch up.
There's no rush yet. k1LLSEN is going to be able to pick up that light, and I love that approach. You know, I've got some breathing space. I'm going to not only pick up some light healths, but this armor's going to be paramount for me because you need to build up as best you can as we go into this next objective. Heavy is about to spawn. RAPHA will admit, you know, you looked at that start. I think a few players probably would have gone down almost guaranteed with that approach. RAPHA spawned, picked up the heavy, went straight in and started to go for like a major fight that k1LLSEN was able to slip away from. From that point, the fact that k1LLSEN was able to even survive that onslaught, especially near that second heavy, is impressive in itself. We're still 0-0, and that is kind of hard to believe, honestly, with how aggressive RAPHA's been.
Oh, this drop down orb to shotgun combo is going to be big, and he loses track of him. The inject comes out, but in the end, RAPHA's able to hunt it down, puts his first frag on the board here, uncorrupted. And more importantly, catch up. He's got the rotation of the items. k1LLSEN taking a lot of damage off the spawn, trying to fight back with a machine gun, but RAPHA has everything in the world to fall back on.
And k1LLSEN will not be able to make his presence known on this next item. All of the armor was blown away. RAPHA now taking that split second to listen. There's a lot of potential escape routes there k1LLSEN can take, and it's fair to assume that k1LLSEN's going to try and do something around this next item, because really, you just can't allow RAPHA to take it uncontested. I think maybe not be there initially, might try and look for some exit damage, but RAPHA doing the smarter thing and taking the safer approach as we now move towards Mega. And this is where we're going to see potentially another fight here. The orb is ready. The orb teleports too. Not enough damage there for RAPHA to really make it count, but importantly, still alive. In doing that, k1LLSEN can disengage and pick up another light armor, something he's desperately going to need. And a great position for that ranged heavy machine gun. Got to give shouts to k1LLSEN here. He has been slippery for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, to keep it at 1-0, being literally one major to his name, one mega at the start, and being able to keep it to 1 and win this heavy is absolutely huge. And that's why k1LLSEN is a previous champion. He's
absolutely
at this stage right now, and he might even scoop up this mega. A little bit of misdirected rocket there from RAPHA, unfortunate. So yes, k1LLSEN's right back in this, and it's a fantastic recovery after a pretty bad start.
I think that's where, kind of where RAPHA mentioned in the interview, people have the pressure on them, people might get nervous. How do people react when things don't go right? And I think there lies the answer to our question at the start of this map. k1LLSEN, by all accounts, should be way more frags down than he currently is. It's just his ability to stay alive, slip away, and more importantly, recover. Not just a matter of running away and delaying the inevitable, bringing himself back into the match is what k1LLSEN's been doing. However, RAPHA is still aggressive. A push in, one shotgun blast, an orb, and a second super shotgun into thank you very much. Can I have 2-0, please? I'm eyeing up that heavy as my next challenge. But denial first, of course.
Look at this, all the lights gone. Now he knows the timing of the heavy. If he can make it back, all the armor is gone off the map. k1LLSEN does have good position with the rocket, so he should be able to scoop that, and he does. But in the back of RAPHA's mind, he is set up to run the map after this mega.
He'll have timing on the heavy at the very least. Best case scenario is pick up every single heavy on the map. k1LLSEN's going to understand that better than anyone, which does introduce a weird situation for him, that should RAPHA be in a better situation for heavy, does k1LLSEN try and fight towards heavy, or does he concede and pick up one of the lights he knows is remaining on the map? In doing so, you know you're going to have nowhere near as much stack as your opponent. There's more of that denial. RAPHA takes that away from k1LLSEN, and an orb is ready to rock and roll. We're going to try and get some of that ranged damage first. k1LLSEN going to be taking this heavy. Hasn't taken any damage, though, to pick up that other light, so keeping that on the back foot is a pretty good strategy. It means that if k1LLSEN takes damage now, he can back off and collect it and restabilize some of that denial that RAPHA's been enforcing.
Good chip from k1LLSEN here. He does have the armor to try and push this. Also inject. RAPHA needs to be careful on the back foot here. Gonna drop down, take this light. Is he gonna make a play for the heavy? He's been giving up the last couple heavies, I believe 2 in a row, make it 3 it looks like as he grabs another light, but he's 2 frags in the lead at the halfway point and still looking pretty strong, but k1LLSEN has the stack now to start extending and trying to get some damage in his first frag.
Well, the Anarchy, especially seeing as the inject was popped, is not going to get as much benefit from that Mega as it would without the inject, frankly. And RAPHA, understanding that, look, again, I just need a little bit of that range damage. In theory, uncontested would be best. I've still got this orb, and k1LLSEN is not going to like that burst damage. And it's something that has really helped secure that second frag. And I think there's a reason now that k1LLSEN hasn't been pushing. He's been keeping as much control as he can. He's been taking as many items, but he's rarely going around these corners when he knows RAPHA's nearby. He's almost never pushing. And the reason being, the damage you're going to take on the way in can be game-changing. Especially seeing as RAPHA's 2 in the lead here, k1LLSEN still needs to stabilize this 2-2. And he's not going to do that just rushing in and get caught by one rocket. And it's huge. Wow. The super shotgun again to finish the job. And just like that, all of that stack undone. A heavy in the hand of RAPHA and an opportunity to push forward towards this Mega should you want it.
Big LG to try and deny this pickup for k1LLSEN, but k1LLSEN with fantastic LG does pick up the Mega, and this gives him a bit of an opportunity. He's going to go through the red room, taking a little bit of rocket damage. Needs to be careful as he backs to the mid of the map here. Machine gun from RAPHA. Shotgun around the corner, and again, as you mentioned, k1LLSEN needs to be very wary of that. The orb shotgun combo, so bursty, so deadly. Up 3-0, RAPHA grabbing this heavy. And I think he has the timing on the Mega catch-up as we saw before in the fight, and he's just going to be able to prance on over and take this one. k1LLSEN maybe getting a rocket or two at best, but the orb, he needs to be very careful here.
That one rocket. A bit of an example that maybe we should get out of here, but RAPHA, by teleporting to the orb, means that there was really not much that could be done. k1LLSEN picks up one much needed frag in this map. However, RAPHA fresh off spawn. The danger is using the orb to try and secure that item. Going down without it, you're now stuck on cooldown right as you've reappeared. There is 3 minutes to go for 2 frags. That is absolutely possible here for k1LLSEN. But at this point, 40, I think we might start to see a little bit of what we saw on Awoken, where RAPHA, he's not going to be desperate to take every single item, but he's going to always try and make sure that he's dealing enough damage in between to just undo that work. He's still going to have burst damage available thanks to Orb. He's got the weapons that he needs to keep himself in charge. This fight for Heavy, rather important for k1LLSEN. However, that rocket is huge, and even bigger so, being knocked up against the wall, so there was nowhere to escape. k1LLSEN now, that light armor is all he's going to get access to in this next fight, as RAPHA, flying up above near LG room, is looking to secure a 4th one. Just a little bit more damage left in the tank needed, and he makes the perfect call out. RAPHA waits for the jump over, juggles my man up high, and 4-1. A great situation for RAPHA 40.
Yeah, sent him to the heavens with that LG. I like the Dire play to throw it on the Mega and say, if you want to try and scope that, you're going to absolutely get telefragged or at least a ton of damage from me. The 3-frag lead, 2 minutes left, and he still has control over the map. k1LLSEN back up against the wall, does have inject up shortly, but he's got to find the damage and the frags, Flea.
My name is not Flea.
Look at his ketchup. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I was either going to let it rock or I wasn't. I chose violence. Anyway.
No, you should. You should.
Minute and a half left to go. And in this position, RAPHA, I mean, it's going to be rather method, I suppose. You know, just keep doing what you need to do, keep this cycle going. I don't think he's going to be particularly desperate to fight for this Heavy that's about to spawn, because frankly, he doesn't need it. He has a lot of resources to bring himself back, and if k1LLSEN does go through this teleporter, I was worried about.
That's a whole bunch of damage.
Yeah, and it's just undone everything. But at that point, what can k1LLSEN do? He's got to go for the fastest approach because he's running out of time.
Oh my god, those rockets are so
GG.
good too. You think that's it? There's no time? 110, the Mega is gone, and I mean, I don't know if I cursed it or jinxed it, but 0-2, and the Dire Orb in the shotgun again is
Wait, he missed! He missed!
So
RAPHA missed the shotgun blast! I would have said GG had the shotgun not missed.
Caster's Curse, we called it early. Oh no! Oh, that's it. Well, that surely,
GG.
Sure, yeah, that surely has to be it. But you can see, again, the gameplay from RAPHA, the game plan is the same. Oh my god.
How did you find that direct, you mad lad?
The armor was just 12 heavies to 6. k1LLSEN just locked out of the map again. And yeah, I mean, this just doesn't even matter at this point, right?
No, not at all.
Catch up. It doesn't matter. Catch up.
Thank you very much, 40 Lions.
Sorry. Yes. You can call me clown. It's fine.
No, I shall not.
At least I didn't call you Dan. That would have been worse.
That would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, that would have been the worst thing
for both of us. But as we close out this map now, though, it's to be honest with you, I feel like it's quite reminiscent of the Awoken performance. I feel like it is that sheer efficiency. It's hard to really, when you look at RAPHA play, there's like, and I do not mean this disrespectfully, it's not like he's doing the most spectacular of plays. He's not doing this wild stuff. He's not playing 1,000 miles an hour. He's not hitting the world's most ridiculous shots. But what he is doing is like the most efficient Quake you've ever seen. Yeah. And it's hard to break that when he locks it in so early.
Again, it's not necessarily a highlight reel all the time where RAPHA plays, but the control he has and the consistency, as you said, calculated play from the Professor, the Sausage King, 2 maps in a row going into the third, all the pressures on k1LLSEN. And what do you do? How do you rebound from something like this? Because this is not a good situation for k1LLSEN. He does have the little bit of a lifeline in lower bracket, but I wouldn't even consider that a lifeline at this stage in the game or ever in a tournament like this.
It's simply a second chance. You know, it's that final opportunity where everyone here is of rather equal skill level. It's why we're here on finals day, for crying out loud. So not something that you would want to think about just yet. I think the approach that you always see taken at this level of play, whether it's interviews or just people being asked about it live on their own streams, I think the statement is always, you take it 1 map at a time. k1LLSEN maybe 2 maps down, but the series is far from lost.
Yes.
You just mentally have got to disregard the last 20 minutes and just look at it saying, right, a fresh start here. If I win the next 3 maps, which I know I have it in me to do, I can still win this. So you look at that map 1 at a time, you pay attention to that and only that, and you just do the best you can. You know, the second you start thinking about all those external elements, you think about the lower bracket, you think about even, you know, moving on and who you might fight later on. That's all irrelevant right now. All that matters is Blood Covenant. 10 minutes of Blood Covenant.
The next 10 minutes are the most important right now for k1LLSEN. RAPHA feeling pretty good, up 2-0. We are going to get into Blood Covenant shortly, and it's going to be, I believe, Visor versus Galena. I mean, that matchup specifically, you mentioned earlier, there's not really any movement abilities, not so much the damage burst or anything like that. This is just going to be tactical, pure Quake kind of play here on map number 3.
I do like the fact that k1LLSEN's going to have Galena on this map. I imagine they're going to have a similar approach to each other. Both champions, as you pointed out, they don't have access to movement that will just let them dominate automatically. You know, we're not going to see champions that are flying around the high ground, double jumping over, crouch sliding over. So you would think that we're going to have a rather slower approach. This could be a very low scoring map. On that note, though, k1LLSEN in this battle of RAPHA having early control and k1LLSEN not really being able to crack his way into it, at least in this matchup, he's going to have access to those totems to top himself up, to make it not as overbearing. If I pick up an item and RAPHA does all this huge damage right as I've reappeared, as we saw on Awoken, as we saw on Blood Covenant, I can drop a totem down, I can heal up, and I can look about what I'm going to do next a lot safer. RAPHA's not going to have as many clear avenues to just push, because you're always going to have to keep in mind, I'm fighting a Galena. The damage I'm expecting to do could be undone at a moment's notice. If I have an unclear idea of where those totems are hidden, you're never fully sure when you dedicate to a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you kind of mentioned earlier, RAPHA not necessarily the flashiest player, so Visor kind of makes sense for him. Cold, calculated, give me the vision. I already know where I'm going to attack from, and I'm just going to make sure 100% as to my plan of attack and where my opponent is. And it's kind of an iconic duo. I know Athena is fantastic on RAPHA and everything, but previously in other iterations of QC, I feel like him and Visor were just inseparable.
Yeah, you always kind of associate a player with a champion, whether it's intended or not. You can sometimes have. I think you look at players like Razy or Strong Sage with a clutch. You look
Maxter and Keel. I mean, that's the best combination.
The new best buddy duo before your very eyes.
Big
fan.
I
know Maxter is also one of the only players that I've seen use Death Knight on weird maps, so I guess we're both equally as a fan of that. But just a reminder to thank everyone for joining us so far. This is the final day of the Quake World Championship. Shouts to QuakeCon, shouts to the lovely crowd and everyone enjoying the show in person. Shouts to the people watching at home. And I mean, look, this crowd's fantastic, and we've only just started. It's still, look, when it comes to gamer time, it's still bright and early. I was going to say, it's like 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's 10:30, and the DGen gamers have come already. We're filling out early, and I love it. Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be here, and this is fantastic. Another day of Quake, Championship Saturday, and I'm just really excited to catch up. catch up.
Don't overthink it, mate. You're fine. Just don't worry.
I feel bad, genuinely.
Well, I've moved on.
Throw me off the stage.
We're already past it.
I'll never move
We
on.
can't. We need you for the rest of the day.
I'm going to be in therapy for another 3 years for that.
Come back to me later. Come back to me later.
We'll talk about it later. But yes, map 3 will be shortly underway. Don't worry, we'll bring you the action. But yes, k1LLSEN's got I think he might want, this break might be good for him, actually. A little bit of a breather here.
It can be.
Mental reset. You can get back into it and kind of restart the whole thing because, again, as a Quake fan, I want to see all 5. So k1LLSEN has to kind of take this one. RAPHA in pole position, so to speak. Up 2-0, feeling really good, looking very dominant across the first 2 maps and looking to add on to the third.
But still looking laser focused.
Absolutely.
RAPHA has...
all gas, no brakes.
There's just something that has to be a motivator to being local crowd. It's the World Finals. Just being able to win a QuakeCon is the dream of any Quake player to begin with. But being so close to absolute success, I mean, you can't lose sight of that end result. And that's what RAPHA's currently keeping in that mind as we now warm up, coming to a close here. Blood Covenant, a slow map potentially, and possibly our lowest scoring game of it.
And this is it. We are live on map number 3. k1LLSEN needs to fight his way out of an 0-2 deficit here in this best of 5. Starting off on RAPHA, he's got that visor and he's got that heavy rocket jumps to rail, so he has that long-range play, and also making sure he grabs some vials so he can have vision at a moment's notice.
Those vials are going to be few and far between in theory, as k1LLSEN using the totems means you're always going to be on cooldown for something, and that's the advantage of a champion like Galena, someone who's constantly throwing things on the floor that those vials are almost always ready to pick up. If you can do that against Visor, you're taking away his ability to get that piercing sight as often as he would want it. Speaking of which, though, RAPHA has got piercing sight ready, but he's not going to need it yet. He knows that k1LLSEN was down near heavy. He's just looking for what a better approach would be near the health. In this case, saw k1LLSEN didn't really help him in regards to not eating a rail in the face. However, again, a clear idea. k1LLSEN probably going to take this heavy. I'm not going to have time for this heavy. I should have said it was mega earlier on, but this is the slow game now. We're going to disengage. We're going to wait for that piercing sight. Maybe scout out a totem. Not worried about giving away his position there. I was wondering if he was actually going to let that rock for a little bit, but chose not to. Oh wow, k1LLSEN with a different approach. I kind of like that unpredictability, 40.
Yeah, but the vision pop just to make sure there's no shenanigans. He's not actually coming up the jump pad. If he does, he had preemptive, and he does go off the jump pad in the middle of the map and takes a rail as RAPHA secures the Mega. And it's going to be a battle of rails here. Both players shooting 3 already, trying to get some good rail damage and open up these fights.
The fact that RAPHA found that rocket on k1LLSEN there.
But he still clipped the toes on that one.
And that is forcing k1LLSEN on the retreat. And this is the once more scary part. k1LLSEN, as we mentioned earlier on though, caught by a rail and forced to retreat, but he has a totem to fall back on. It means he could push forward here. The jump pad is going to be far too great a risk. And in this case, it's going to be piercing sight activated. Mega collected. And in this instance, RAPHA on the hunt for just a little bit more. Was looking for a rail angle, no one home. Still 0-0. But the moment this high ground is controlled, this is where the player can take advantage on Blood Covenant, because you have so much coverage. You can take the Mega much more freely. You can at least cover, you can see the heavy, so you can pepper down damage even if you yourself have to concede it. In this case, he didn't. Now, RAPHA, is he going to be aggressive up this jump pad? It's a huge risk to take. Waited for the totem, and in this instance, chooses to do the safe thing. And I think that is so accurate of RAPHA's gameplay. Is some players might have pushed up there because they had so much stack, but it's not worth it. You know, we don't need to push yet. There's no rush. We've got 7 minutes left on the clock.
And look at him chaining together these rails as well. Even in that position, being kind of caught out down by the pillars, he still managed to hit some rails, and k1LLSEN has no armor. He kind of is forced to try and play around these lights as RAPHA now is slowly, you can see, expanding his control of the map.
Speaking of which, we're going to add one more major item to that tally, 40. A good rocket, to be fair, from k1LLSEN, that one. Nice little angle to find. And it's, right now, things are quite methodical. You know, it's item into item into item. RAPHA tends to take it uncontested. k1LLSEN happy to concede. At some point, someone is going to have to interrupt this with something. All right, Tribot first. Ooh. And actually an unreturned rail. That piercing sight, is it going to lead to at least one shot? Unfortunately, it will not. And that does mean that k1LLSEN is bringing himself back into this. 3 rails back to back. I mean, they called him Railson for a reason. Wonderful way to become 1-0 up on this map.
Not bad at all. He's going to want more of that, trying to avoid some of the damage. Heavy's going to be up, and RAPHA actually cuts him off. He's able to steal that one away, and the split between the items is so big that RAPHA can potentially rotate back, but a great rail again in LG. He's trapped. RAPHA fighting for his life, and the shotgun switch! Shoddy Pippin, look at RAPHA hanging by a thread, and he converts that somehow.
They're playing the wrong game, mate. This ain't Doom. Where'd that super shotgun come from? 1 frag apiece now, though. RAPHA not very healthy, we have to remember. The next item being Mega, but there's no rail for RAPHA, and that's made that fight just a little bit more awkward. I kind of think there's a bit of comfort here knowing that, right, I'm going to be able to take this health uncontested. k1LLSEN's going to take that, so I'll do a little bit of damage first, and now we can back off. We can take out this totem, we can shut down some of that Galena utility, and at the same time, keep a nice fat delay between these 2 items. You can just see k1LLSEN setting up shop.
Yeah.
Can't quite tell if he heard piercing sight from that far away. But either way, he's erring on the side of caution, and that is the right approach, if you ask me.
Then he's going to rocket jump over. He wants to claim the light armor and set up position on this Mega early, as he did on the Heavy. And what?
Oh, now we go in.
Big defensive rocket from k1LLSEN, 38 HP, 2 seconds. And the tri-bolt will not land. k1LLSEN avoids that damage, but wow.
Narrowly misses that rail too. k1LLSEN was dancing with the devil up there, I think, and it's fortunate for him that he was able to stay alive. Some good defensive positioning. RAPHA not really able to get any mileage out of that tri-bolt either. And these rails, I mean, we're going for them just in case. You know, if there is an angle and I can safely do it, why not take the shot? However, next item, Heavy, in the hands of RAPHA. Quite a while until piercing sight, and as you can notice here from RAPHA, there's just not a lot of hourglasses to collect, and that is in no small part to k1LLSEN using the totems constantly on this map.
For the time being, it's going to be another 20 seconds.
Boom.
So they can get one. Woo. There's a little bit of a rail there as k1LLSEN caught off guard. We'll have the totem. Oh, no.
That's a risk. That was a huge risk going up that jump pad. There was no item lying in wait as a reward. The race to Heavy begins. RAPHA trying to cut off k1LLSEN, maybe trying to catch him pushing in. A fair bet too, as the light armor was down there, expecting k1LLSEN to concede the 2-piece combo. Rocket into rail. RAPHA has just taken the lead, and the piercing sight is activated. 2 rails back to back. He's looking for a third, misses the 3rd shot, but k1LLSEN stuck on the retreat, falls into some LG, and this was a slow game to begin with, but now 6.5 minutes in, RAPHA has taken the lead.
2 frag lead, and k1LLSEN has to dig deep here to claw this one back as RAPHA looks better and better throughout the map. He's going to have vision after these vials as well for this next Mega.
There's that piercing sight once more, and he knows that k1LLSEN's standing around Mega, so I think the timing is still there too. Why else would you be standing there if not to pick it up? 3 minutes on the clock, and k1LLSEN, if he wants to stay in this upper bracket, it's going to be a long 3 minutes to even recover 2 frags here. RAPHA, that small little burst, enough to perhaps win this series for him. The control is maintained. It's not long now until that piercing sight is again available.
And he can also take comfort knowing there's not going to be any real shenanigans. With the Galena, you don't have any kind of ability to close the gap. You're going to hear rocket jumps as he tries to aggress, and that's great damage from RAPHA. And RAPHA looking for a little bit more. A tickle around the corner. He's going to drop it again. As you mentioned, vision already back in hand. Good rocket from k1LLSEN as RAPHA trying to find this one rail, has the vision, just wants a little bit more damage. But most of all, he just wants to play this defensive game. And look at that, he's even conceding.
Changed his mind.
Yeah, he's conceding the Heavy. He's like, this is a bad situation for me if I get caught out here. I don't need it. I'm going to double back. I'm going to grab the Mega, more vials again. And he's just playing that defensive game that he needs to play. He's 2 minutes away from advancing catch-up.
And even there's a rail 1v1 to be had, and RAPHA has no interest in taking it. I would have liked to have had the damage there, but you've just hit me with a rail. There's no reason for me to stick around. The rest of the map belongs to RAPHA. So many ways to fill up, even on these light pickups, and with the ability to play defensive. A piercing sight used defensively here, that's going to be a nightmare for k1LLSEN, because now how does k1LLSEN look for an angle? How does k1LLSEN surprise you when you can see him through the map? It's a horrible combination, and now 1.5 minutes left. k1LLSEN, my man's in trouble.
Pressure is absolutely on. And it's just been the story of the entire series, it feels like, as RAPHA's just controlled the pace of each and every map. Good rail from k1LLSEN here, but he needs a lot more. Totem in hand if he does get close and take some damage, but he's got to start moving. That sense of urgency has to pick up here. A minute 10 on a map like this with a champion that has no movement abilities. It's going to be rough here, catch up.
That rail around the corner failed to land as well. A chance now for k1LLSEN to push forward. Let's not forget, only needs 2. RAPHA deeming that as necessary, but k1LLSEN with more stack to chase it. Okay, all right. Here's an opportunity. RAPHA is safely around the corner. k1LLSEN's able to take that major buff of health. But RAPHA is going to have to run away now for 40 seconds. Look for the most unexpected avenues. That piercing sight is gone for a fair while. And we shall see. We've got to do this the old-fashioned way. The weapon choice to stop that rocket jump and to make k1LLSEN have to work so hard just to get himself back here. RAPHA has just picked up a railgun too. k1LLSEN without armor doesn't want to get hit by even a single rail. Otherwise, there is no chance of coming back. 15 seconds on the clock. It's now or never for k1LLSEN, and that rail, I fear, has sealed the deal. He's going to pick up a Mega just to try and stay a bit safer, but it's too little, too late. RAPHA, by all means, is going to take this series, take that final map, and advance further into that upper bracket.
He did it again. Sausage King of Chicago, the hometown hero, with a very dominant performance there. That last map was extremely close, but you could hear it. The crowd giving it up for RAPHA as he will advance. And k1LLSEN, he's not out of it yet.
No.
But the lower bracket is a nightmare to be in.
By no means is k1LLSEN out of this tournament. You know, it's just going to have to continue to fight, take out a bunch of players that he's fought many times before. There's just something about RAPHA in this setting with the crowd behind you, the home turf, the LAN, the QuakeCon. It's a bit of a magical recipe, I think.
I mean, where do we even start? First off, I would have never imagined looking at these top semifinals that we would have 2 series go 3-0, right? I mean, we even said a little bit, like, probably unlikely. I guess it could happen. I think here's what I take away. First off, RAZY looks amazing. Looks like he doesn't want to get second place. Like, played awesome. RAPHA, he looks like he, you know, someone who is the GOAT, the champion. He didn't lose. People are like, oh no, another tournament for RAPHA win. We've seen him in a lot of different shapes over the last few years. This looks like a top tier RAPHA right now. And again, it's kind of mind blowing to think about taking the former champion right to the level that he just did in 3 games. And guess what? We've got the winner RAPHA with us right now. Turn you on there. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thanks, Sweet. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, where do we start? First off, when we looked at the picks and bans, some interesting matchups there. But when you're going into something like that, do you even expect that I can win this in 3?
Yeah, you got to just take it one map at a time. I think between both of us, we've had a few times where we've 3-0'd each other. And
right.
But every time that it happens, the games are super close. And the margin of error is just so small between all of us here at like the top 6. So, yeah, thankfully I just played really well for all 3 maps. And I think that, like, I think he can turn around his play a little bit in the lower bracket. I think that we both were playing a little bit nervous, and if he manages to like refocus himself, and he could be a dangerous threat in the lower bracket.
Yeah.
I'd like to certainly take this opportunity to ask you about here. We are at QuakeCon. The local crowd is back. They clearly have their tournament favorite. In between the maps, I'm sure you can hear it, and in between frags, maybe. Then how good those noise-canceling headphones are. But I just want to ask you, how does it feel for you to be in this environment and to have this support? Do you feel like it helps fuel you in any way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I've had to play all over the world, which has been quite the blessing, but it's always good to be at QuakeCon, and I think it's really special to be back here after 4 years. It's been a really nice event, and yeah, I hope we're putting on a great show for everybody.
I feel from the crowd reaction, don't have to worry about that. I
think they're having fun. I think they're enjoying it. RAPHA, congratulations on advancing. I just want to know, map number 2, that Ranger Anarchy matchup, that is that is something you're absolutely comfortable with. We see the Dire Orb shotgun. I mean, when you saw that happen in the picks, were you automatically like, that one's a W for me? I mean, obviously you can't just think that way, but in your head you had to be, was that the most comfortable matchup that you had out of the set in your opinion?
I think it was the most comfortable because of how the start went.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those where whoever manages to get the really good first engagement and controls the tempo, it gets really difficult because let's say it turned around and he got 2 to 3 frags. Trying to chase Anarchy even with Ranger Orb can be very difficult. So no, I just, like, going into the game, I just tried to, you know, think about what are the win conditions with this matchup on this map. What are the fights that I absolutely have to avoid because, you know, of his strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, I managed to just play really well. And yeah, I had a couple really good, like, orb frags. Yeah, even if the orb didn't result in kill, just like the repositioning and the damage.
And you got to shout out Shoddy Pippin. Because if this is Jordan, couldn't be Jordan without Shoddy Pippin. But also, you've been quoted as saying, you know, these matches wouldn't be as great as if, you know, your opponent wasn't as high of a level as they are. So the longevity between you two, what does that mean to you? I mean, again, 13 years ago in Germany, IEM, you know, like, you guys are still here upper bracket playing. Like, what does that mean to you as a player?
Well, for me, I think honestly, for k1LLSEN, I'm proud of him to see where he came from in Quake Live for being on the fringe of, like, top 8. You know, he did win that one tournament against me, and then the others he would get so close but just could not finish the job. And then to be able to overcome that hurdle for himself in Quake Champions and to be the champion that he is, it's very, very difficult to do that. And so, you know, obviously, really proud of, like, what he's done, and to be able to have that kind of rivalry between, like, right now, like him, myself, Wenger, and then Razy, who's been trying over and over to get it. It's something pretty special.
Speaking of Razy, you'll be facing him now in the upper bracket finals. And, you know, when we saw Razy play versus his teammate Wenger earlier this morning, he definitely looked like someone who's like, you know what, I'm kind of tired of getting second place. I'm going to bring him in.
Indeed.
And there might have been some whispers of someone saying, you know what, Rapha's playing like he wants that championship again, right? How much is that motivating to you in terms of, like, as someone who, right, won so many back-to-backs and then the last couple outings have not been, right, the most spectacular?
No, I agree. And I've been very, very hungry this year to get it back. You know, and the whole season, I just looked at it like it needs to be a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
And so I think the biggest thing was taking a bit of a break before the last few weeks and then really focusing leading up to the tournament and just trying to be in the right mindset to be in the moment all the time. And yeah, I really want to win it again. So
awesome. Any final thoughts, any shout-outs before we wrap it up and let you take a break?
Just obviously, you know, as always, thank you so much to Team Liquid for supporting me, and obviously all the supporting sponsors and all my friends and family, especially everybody that's here that's been cheering me on. I love you guys, and those that aren't here, I miss you so much. But yeah, and then let's hope there's more amazing games to come.
All right. Well, we're definitely hoping some more amazing games. Thank you, RAPHA. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, unfortunately, we've got to send someone home an elimination match in the lower bracket. That's coming up. Don't go away. We'll be right back.